A world in shambles, hundreds of millions of innocent lives lost. A tangled network of international espionage lurked in every shadow. In the times of the harrowing espionage of the deadliest wars in history, one man rose through the ranks of the US government and brought a new perspective into the study of cryptology in a time of great need. One man who aided in the decryption and interception of the infamous Japanese purple ciphers, established groundbreaking organizations for cryptology, and revolutionized national security in the United States. One man who represented a novel frontier in the field of cryptology, whose innovations would open the possibilities of espionage. This is the story of William Frederick Friedman, the father of modern cryptology.
Any cryptologist today is standing on the shoulders of the Friedmans. They were the best. They were brilliant, pioneers, pathbreakers, geniuses.
William Friedman, a groundbreaking frontier in the history of modern cryptology. Wolf Friedman, born in September of 1891, was only an infant when he and his family fled from Russia to the United States to avoid anti-Semitic decrees. In a few years, he became a U.S. citizen and changed his name to William Friedman, a title that would go down in history as a trailblazer in a new world of modern cryptology. Even as a young child, Friedman was extremely inquisitive about patterns and puzzles, especially in language. He was drawn to The Gold Bug, a story by Edgar Allan Poe, which included an encoded message. However, William's interest in science intervened before he could pursue cryptology. A bright student, he graduated high school and enrolled in Cornell University as a genetics major. Although he would pursue a lifelong career in cryptology, this background of science and genetics would soon allow him to bring a new perspective into the practices of cryptography. After graduating in 1914, he was soon approached by George Fabian to work at Riverbank Laboratories on wheat breeding. There, he rapidly became interested in one of Fabian's projects, analyzing a hypothesis that Francis Bacon, an analyst of ciphers, was the true author of the infamous Shakespeare's plays. This was the spark to the fire that would become Friedman's career in cryptology, which would set outdated methods of espionage and security ablaze. Friedman would then start work on analyzing the Baconian cipher in 1916, developed by Francis Bacon. Also assigned to this project was Elizabeth Smith, another ingenious cryptographer, who, after a year, would become Elizabeth Friedman. Both names would be immortalized forever for their contributions to the complex world of ciphers and encryptions. With his background in agriculture and genetics, Friedman was able to apply decryption techniques that stemmed from approaches to analyzing population genetics. This brilliant and innovative outlook on the field of decryption was what set William aside and allowed him to analyze ciphers in a way that no one else could.
His treatment of the subject matter emphasized the value of communication intelligence to naval commanders, the vital importance of maintaining the security of our own communication intelligence activities, and the necessity for observing the principles of communication security in defense against enemy communication intelligence.
In 1918, after about 1 year, he then started to work with the United States government to analyze German codes. As the US began to play a part in World War I, there was a sudden increased need for cryptographers in the government, and Friedman was put in charge of delivering basic training to officers. He would then publish the infamous The Index of Coincidence and its applications in cryptanalysis, which would include novel ideas and groundbreaking conclusions that would further advance the field of cryptology. This text is still used, decades later, as a reference for cryptographers.
We shouldn't forget that he invented the U.S. Army's own best unbroken cipher machine, that he wrote many of the papers that put the field onto its mathematical foundations, and that he sorted out the very vocabulary of the field and invented the term cryptanalysis.
After the war, Friedman would return to Riverbank, only to return to the Army in 1921 as a civilian cryptographer. Over the next decade, William taught other Army officers the art of cryptography and published countless pamphlets and manuals about the subject. He would also intercept numerous encrypted messages that would lead to the exposure of countless scandals and illegal activities, thereby ensuring the safety of his nation and saving millions of lives through his brilliance. In 1930, after around a decade in the Army, Friedman received a chance that would change his life and the field of cryptography forever. The Army Signal Corps established the Signal Intelligence Service and enlisted Friedman as its first cryptography head. In 1939, he would be introduced to perhaps the biggest challenge of his career, entitled the Purple Cipher by the SIS. The Japanese had replaced their encryption system with this infamous cipher, used for the majority of their sensitive communications. Friedman and his team worked relentlessly on cracking this code, commonly regarded as one of the most complicated ever created. After only 18 months, William Friedman and his team were able to reconstruct the Japanese encryption machine with only $684.65 without ever laying eyes on it.
The fact that William Friedman and his team at the Army were able to solve this machine meant that he sort of gave the Allies a decisive edge.
This decryption device was nicknamed Magic to represent the seemingly magical advantage that the U.S. had gained.
U.S. citizens discovered last week that perhaps their most potent secret weapon of World War II was not radar, not the VT fuse, not the atom bomb, but a harmless little machine which cryptographers painstakingly constructed in a hidden room in Washington.
This contribution during the bloodiest war in history may just have saved hundreds of millions of innocent civilian lives. Friedman would soon retire as the head of the Signal Intelligence Service, but would continue to work in the SIS and numerous other government cryptology associations, providing intel during World War II and ensured the survival of millions of people during one of the deadliest and most devastating wars in history. After more than 2 decades, Friedman was still providing instrumental advancements and information for the world of cryptology. He was appointed the Chief Technical Consultant of the National Security Agency in 1952 and was promoted to a Special Assistant to the Director within a few years. William Friedman retired in 1955 after making incredible advancements in cryptology and espionage.
They were enormously influential. In America, they invented powerful new methods of making and breaking codes. They literally wrote the textbooks for an entire generation of codebreakers.
He would then pass away in 1969 at the age of 78 and was buried with the quote, "Knowledge is power," on his tombstone, which flawlessly encompasses his unorthodox and inventive paths that would trailblaze concepts of cryptology in a way that no one could have anticipated. He lives on in history, responsible for the safety and survival of billions of people all across the world.
There is almost no area of modern life that isn't somehow touched on by the developments that Friedman was involved in.
William Friedman represented a new frontier in the world of cryptology and trailblazed a new path into this field that would change the way that governments approached ideas of safety and espionage to the present day, and completely revolutionize the way that cryptographers would approach ciphers and encryption. Not only did Friedman manage to follow his passion for this world of encryption, coming from an entirely different field, but he was able to use his previous knowledge and brilliance to advance cryptology as a whole. He has received a myriad of awards for his contributions to this field, such as the Presidential Award for Merit in 1946 and the National Security Medal, but no honor could possibly encompass the unfathomable influence that he has had on the world of cryptology, as well as the billions of lives saved by his brilliance. Not only will his name live on in history as the genius behind the decryption of the Purple Cipher, but his contributions will continue to ensure the safety of citizens all around the world and advance espionage techniques for decades to come. William Frederick Friedman ushered in one of the most pivotal frontiers in history in the complex disciplines of encryption and decryption, and undoubtedly merited the title, the father of modern cryptology.